The Grand Assembly Hall stretched across 3 kilometers of polished crystal floors. Above, the dome displayed the swirling colors of 600 star systems, each one represented by the species that called it home. 847 different beings filled the vast chamber, their forms ranging from towering stone-like creatures to small flying wisps of energy. They had all gathered for one purpose: to witness humanity sign the Galactic Pact. Kong Daeon stood at the entrance, his dark suit pressed perfectly, his expression calm. Beside him, Park Nari carried a slim tablet containing humanity's response. They had spent 50 years preparing for this moment. 50 years of learning alien languages, understanding customs, and studying the complex web of galactic politics. Every human child now learned that Earth was no longer alone in the universe. The pact itself was ancient. For 6,000 years, it had kept peace among the stars. Every species that reached faster than light travel received the same invitation. Join the Council, surrender your weapons, share your technology, and accept the rules. In return, you received protection, trade routes, and a voice in galactic affairs. 846 species had signed. Not one had ever refused. Daeon walked forward, his footsteps echoing despite the noise of the crowd. The aliens watched him with hundreds of different types of eyes. Some whispered in languages that sounded like music. Others remained silent, their massive bodies still as mountains. At the center of the hall, a raised platform held the signing stone. A piece of rock older than most civilizations. Morthen waited there. The Voth leader had overseen 400 signing ceremonies in his long life. His body resembled a tree made of silver metal, with branches that moved like arms. His face, if it could be called that, showed something like satisfaction. Another species would join the order. Another potential threat would be contained. Park Nari stepped up to the platform first. She placed her tablet on the reading podium, and her voice amplified across the hall. The translation devices built into every seat converted her words into hundreds of languages simultaneously. Honored council members, she began. Humanity thanks you for your patience during our learning period. We have studied your laws, your history, and the pact that binds you together. We understand the peace it has brought. We respect the order it maintains. Morthen's branches moved in what might have been a nod. This was standard. The young species always showed gratitude before signing. However, Park Nari continued, and the hall fell silent. We must respectfully decline. The reaction was immediate. The hall erupted in chaos. Beings jumped from their seats. Others activated communication devices. The musical whispers became shouts. Morthen's branches froze in place, then began shaking. Possible, he said, his voice cutting through the noise. No species refuses the pact. It is not done. It cannot be done. Daeon stepped forward now. Taking position beside Park Nari, his military training kept him steady, even as hundreds of angry aliens focused on him. We mean no disrespect, Daeon said clearly, but we cannot sign a treaty we had no part in creating. The pact requires us to surrender our military, limit our artificial intelligence research, restrict our expansion, and share all our technology. In return, we receive protection we did not ask for, and restrictions we do not accept. A massive creature with 6 legs and crystal armor stood up from the council seats. You are children in a dangerous galaxy. The pact protects new species from themselves and from others. You do not understand the threats that exist beyond your small corner of space. Park Nari shook her head. We understand perfectly. We have studied the pact's history. It was created by the 5 oldest species to control the younger ones. It prevents military competition, technological advancement, and independent action. It is not a treaty of equals. It is a system of control. The hall exploded again. Some species shouted in agreement, surprising everyone. Others demanded immediate sanctions. A few simply sat in shock, unable to process what they were hearing. Morthon raised his branches high, and slowly the noise died down. His ancient eyes fixed on Daeon. You understand what you are doing? Without the pact, you have no protection. Any species may attack you. Trade routes may be closed. You will be alone. Dayon met his gaze without fear. We prefer to be alone and free than protected and controlled. Humanity did not travel to the stars to kneel. This is foolishness. Another council member stood, this one resembling a floating sphere of water with lights inside. The pact has maintained peace for millennia. One arrogant species will not destroy it. Parknari activated her tablet, and suddenly every display in the hall showed documents, charts, and legal analysis. We have prepared a full report on the Pact's structure. It shows how older species maintain technological advantages by preventing younger ones from developing certain fields. It demonstrates how the mandatory sharing only flows upward. It reveals how council arbitration has ruled in favor of older species in 94% of all disputes. The hall fell silent again as species began reading the data. Many had never seen this analysis before. Some looked angry. Others looked troubled. A small insectoid being in the far corner quietly took notes. His name was Thick, and he represented the Breathen, a species that had signed the pact 200 years ago. He watched the humans with growing interest. Morthen's voice became cold. You will regret this decision. The galaxy is not kind to those who stand alone. Dayon bowed slightly, a gesture of respect without submission. Perhaps, but it is our decision to make. Parknari gathered her tablet. Together, the two humans turned and walked back down the long hall. Behind them, the council erupted into arguments. Some species demanded action against humanity. Others called for negotiation. A few simply stared at the retreating humans, wondering if they had just witnessed history or disaster far above Earth. Captain Onsun Ho stood on the bridge of the indomitable humanity's first deep space warship. The message came through encrypted channels. The refusal was complete. He looked at his crew, men and women who had trained for this moment. All hands to stations, he ordered calmly. We knew this day would come. Humanity has chosen its path. Now we defend it. Ship's engines powered up, and across Earth's system, dozens of other vessels did the same. In the Grand Assembly Hall, the Council continued to argue, unaware that the galaxy they had controlled for so long had just changed forever. Dayon and Parknari returned to their ship in silence. They knew what they had done. They had broken 6,000 years of precedent. They had made humanity a target. They had also made humanity free. The journey home would take 3 weeks. By the time they arrived, the galaxy would never be the same. 3 months had passed since the refusal. News traveled slowly across the galaxy, but when it arrived, it struck like lightning. Species that had existed under the pact for hundreds or thousands of years suddenly questioned everything they had accepted as truth. Lee. Hyjin sat in her office on Earth, watching reports flood in from across known space. As Minister of Interstellar Relations, she had expected backlash. What she had not expected was the sheer chaos that humanity's single word had unleashed. The Council had fractured into 3 camps almost immediately. The hardliners, led by Morthen and the oldest species, demanded immediate action. They wanted humanity punished, made an example to prevent others from following the same path. The moderates argued for negotiation, hoping to bring humanity back into the fold through diplomacy. The isolationists simply wanted to ignore Earth entirely, cutting off all contact and letting humans face the dangers of the galaxy alone. What concerned Hyjin most was the 4th group that had emerged unexpectedly. 14 species had begun their own quiet rebellion. They had not left the pact, not yet, but they were asking questions. Loudly, her communication device chimed. An encrypted signal, source unknown. She activated the privacy field around her desk and accepted the call. A Breathen appeared on the screen. His insectoid features were hard for humans to read, but his voice translator carried a tone of urgency. Minister Lee, my name is Thick. I represent certain interests within the Breathen Union. We wish to speak with you privately. Hyjin leaned forward. I'm listening. Your species has done something remarkable. Something we have dreamed of for 2 centuries but never dared attempt. The pact is a cage, Minister. A comfortable cage, yes, but a cage nonetheless. We wish to help you survive what comes next. Before Hajin could respond, another alert flashed across her screen. This one was not encrypted. The Yulnathi Empire had issued a formal statement. She felt her blood run cold as she read it. Kagwan sat in the intelligence headquarters beneath Seoul, surrounded by screens showing data from 1,000 sources. As Earth's senior intelligence officer, she had spent the last 3 months piecing together the galaxy's hidden truths. What she found terrified her. The Pact had not maintained peace through justice or cooperation. It maintained peace through fear and suppression. Young species were deliberately kept weak, their military capabilities limited, their technology controlled. The older species hoarded knowledge and power, ensuring that no new rivals could emerge. But there was more. Her analysis revealed fracture lines throughout the entire galactic order. Species harbored resentments that went back centuries. Border disputes had been frozen in place, never resolved, just suppressed. Technological advancement had slowed to a crawl because innovation was restricted. The Pact had not created peace. It had created stagnation. Her console beeped. New intelligence from deep space? The Yulnathi were mobilizing their fleets. She pulled up the data, and her suspicions were confirmed. 40 warships, all moving toward human space. The Yulnathi claimed it was independent action. But Kogwan knew better. She immediately contacted Commander Choi Minho at the Luna Defense Grid. Choi stood on the observation deck of Luna Station, Earth's moon hanging in the void behind him. He read Kogwan's report with growing concern. The Yulnathi were coming, and they were not alone. 3 other species had begun military exercises near human territory. The pattern was clear. The Council could not officially attack humanity without breaking their own laws. But they could look the other way while others did the job. "Get me aligned to all defense stations," Choi ordered his communications officer. "I want every ship ready for combat. Full weapons check, shields at maximum, and all personnel recalled from leave." His second-in-command looked worried. "Sir, if the Yulnathi are really coming with 40 ships, we only have 18 combat-ready vessels. The odds are not good." Choi smiled grimly. "The Yulnathi expect us to fight by pact rules. Restricted weapons, limited AI support, conventional tactics. They're about to learn what humans can do when we make our own rules." On Earth, Park Nari worked 20-hour days preparing humanity's response. The legal analysis she had presented at the Council had caused more damage than she expected. Species across the galaxy were studying it, finding flaws in the pact they had never noticed before. Some species contacted Earth secretly, asking for advice. Others sent threats. A few simply went silent, their governments apparently paralyzed by internal debate. But the most interesting development came from an unexpected source. The Rithon Collective, a species known for their strict adherence to tradition, had suspended their pact obligations. They cited concerns about legal inconsistencies and refused to elaborate. 2 days later, the Qualish did the same. Park Nari brought the news to the emergency cabinet meeting. Prime Minister Song Yoonji listened carefully, her expression thoughtful. "So we've started something we cannot stop," Song said quietly. "The question is whether it leads to freedom or chaos." "Perhaps both," Park Nari replied. "Systems this old do not fall quietly." Song nodded. "Then we must be ready to help build something better from the ruins." Back in space, the situation grew more tense by the day. The Yulnathi fleet had entered neutral territory, moving steadily toward human colonies. Commander Choi deployed his forces carefully. Knowing that the first battle would set the tone for everything that followed, Captain, An Sung-ho took the Indomitable to the frontier along with 5 other warships. They positioned themselves between the incoming threat and New Jeju, humanity's furthest colony. 20,000 civilians lived there, families who had traveled across the stars to build a new home. They would not be abandoned. The Yulnathi sent a message. It was simple and brutal. "Leave this sector or be removed." An replied with equal simplicity, "No." Lee Haijin continued her secret communications with Thick. The Breathen operative provided intelligence about council movements, warned of potential threats, and shared technical data that helped human scientists improve their defenses. In return, Hyjin shared Park Nari's legal analysis and Earth's philosophical position on freedom and self-determination. "Why help us?" Hyjin asked during one conversation. "Your species is safe within the pact." Vic's translator carried something like sadness. "We are safe, but not free. When the Breathen joined the pact, we were told it was necessary for survival. But we gave up our dreams of the stars, our research into quantum technology, our right to defend ourselves. We have been safe for 200 years, Minister. We have also been irrelevant." Ko Juwan's intelligence network uncovered the final piece of the puzzle. The Yolnathi attack had been approved by the Council's inner circle. Not officially, but in private meetings where no records were kept. They wanted to test humanity, to see if Earth could be easily conquered. If the humans fell quickly, other rebellious species would see the cost of defiance. If humans fought well, the Council could deny involvement and negotiate either way, the Council maintained. Plausible deniability while eliminating a threat. Giwan sent her report to every level of Earth's government. The message was clear. Humanity was not just facing the Yolnathi. They were facing the entire galactic order. Hidden behind layers of deception, the final days before the battle arrived were filled with preparation. Ships were armed with weapons that violated every pact regulation. Human engineers had spent 50 years developing technology in secret, knowing this day might come. Quantum disruption missiles that could tear apart shields. Gravitic mines that created artificial gravity wells. Autonomous drones that could think and adapt faster than any organic pilot. The Pact had restricted these technologies for a reason. They were devastatingly effective as the Yolnathi fleet approached. Something unexpected happened. 3 more species announced they were suspending their Pact obligations. 2 others recalled their ambassadors from the Council. The galactic order that had stood for 6,000 years was cracking, and the sound echoed across the stars. On Luna Station, Commander Choi watched the enemy fleet on his tactical display. 40 ships against 18. Under normal circumstances, this would be a massacre. But these were not normal circumstances. "All ships," he broadcast on the fleet channel. "Remember what we fight for. Not conquest. Not glory, freedom, the right to choose our own path. Show them what free humans can do." Yolnathi fleet crossed into human space, and the first battle of the new era began. The exploration vessel. Horizon's Edge had been mapping the frontier reaches for 6 months when Captain Hante Wu received the emergency broadcast. All civilian ships were ordered to return to protected space immediately. The Yolnathi were coming. Han looked at his crew of 12 scientists and explorers. They were far from any military protection, 3 weeks away from the nearest human outpost. But they were not defenseless. Every human ship built after the refusal carried weapons. Hidden but ready. "Navigation, plot a course to New Jeju," Han ordered. "Maximum speed. We're going to help." His first officer looked concerned. "Captain, we're an exploration ship. We have 2 small railguns and basic shields. Against a Yolnathi warship, we would last maybe 30 seconds. Han smiled. "Then we'll make those 30 seconds count. Besides, we won't be fighting alone." The Yolnathi fleet arrived at New Jeju system with confidence. War Master Grentok commanded 40 vessels, each one larger and more powerful than the human ships that waited for them. He had studied Earth's limited military capabilities. The humans had numbers and system defense, but not quality. This would be a quick victory. His communications officer reported that the human commander was requesting dialogue. Grentok laughed, a sound like grinding stone. "Tell them to surrender the colony and withdraw. If they comply within 1 hour, we will allow them to leave peacefully. If not, we will demonstrate why young species accept the pact." Commander Choi Minho received the ultimatum aboard his flagship. Around him, his bridge crew waited for orders. In the tactical display, 40 red icons approached their 18 green ones. The numbers looked bad, but Choi knew something Grentok did not. Send reply. We decline. New Jeju is human territory, and we will defend it. Then he opened the fleet channel. All ships, weapons free. Execute Delta Protocol. Lieutenant Yoon Murray stood in the command center of New Jeju's main settlement. She led the Marine detachment assigned to protect the colony, though until now the assignment had been quiet. That was about to change. All defensive positions manned and ready, her sergeant reported. Ground 2 space batteries charged. Emergency shelters at capacity with civilians. Murray checked her rifle one more time. The pact restricted many weapons, but Earth had never signed, which meant her Marines carried plasma rifles, energy shields, and combat armor that would make a pact soldier jealous. If the Yolnathi made it to the ground, they would find humans harder to kill than expected. The battle began badly for the fleet. Grentok ordered his fleet forward in standard formation, shields raised, weapons ready. They would simply overpower the human ships with superior numbers and firepower. It was a tactic that had worked for 1,000 years. The first wave of human missiles arrived 3 minutes later, but these were not normal missiles. They were quantum disruption weapons, forbidden by the Pact because they could penetrate any conventional shield. The Yul-Nothi fleet watched in confusion as the missiles passed through their barriers, like they did not exist. 10 ships exploded in the first salvo. Grentok's confidence evaporated. Return fire. All weapons. Destroy those ships. But the human fleet was not where his sensors said they should be. They were using gravitic drives, another restricted technology, which allowed them to move in ways that violated normal physics. The Yul-Nothi fired at empty space while human ships appeared behind them, launching more of those impossible missiles. On Earth, Lim Seokshin watched the battle unfold from his tactical analysis center. Every data point, every weapon fired, every maneuver was recorded and studied. This was not just a battle. It was a demonstration. He opened a channel to Lee Haijin. Minister, you should see this. The Yul-Nothi are losing badly. Their tactics assume pact limitations that we don't have. They literally don't know how to fight an enemy who can use unrestricted technology. Haijin watched the display with mixed feelings. Humans were winning, yes, but this would have consequences. The galaxy was watching. Every species would see what happened when the Pact's limitations were removed. Captain? Han and the Horizon's Edge arrived at the battle's outer edge. His small ship could not survive in the main combat zone, but he could help in other ways. His science team had been studying Yul-Nothi communication protocols. Within minutes, they had hacked into the enemy fleet's tactical network. Captain, his communications officer said excitedly, we're inside their system. We can see everything they're sending to each other. Han grinned. Then let's share that with Commander Choi. Real-time enemy communications should even the odds a bit more. The tide of battle turned completely. With perfect intelligence about Yul-Nothi movements and weapons that the enemy could not defend against, the human fleet became unstoppable. Ship after ship fell to precisely targeted attacks. Grentok watched his fleet disintegrate around him. Retreat. He finally ordered, all ships withdraw to rally point 7. But the human fleet was faster. Autonomous drones, small craft piloted by advanced artificial intelligence, swarmed the fleeing ships. The Yul-Nothi point defense systems could not track them all. More ships died. Lieutenant Yoon watched from the surface as the sky filled with explosions. The ground batteries never even needed to fire. The space battle was over in 4 hours, a complete human victory. Greenwich's flagship was disabled but not destroyed. Commander Choi ordered it captured intact. Marine boarding teams, led by specialists trained for zero-gravity combat, stormed the vessel. They found Grentok on his bridge, surrounded by dead crew members and smoking consoles. I am War Master Grentok, he said with what dignity he had left. I demand to be treated according to the Pact's regulations for prisoners of war. The Marine commander shook his head. We are not part of the Pact. You are a prisoner under human law now. That means you get a fair trial, medical treatment, and protection from abuse. Better than the Pact, actually. On the Breathen homeworld, Thick watched the battle footage that his intelligence service had obtained. He immediately sent it to Lee Haijin, along with a message, this changes everything. You have proven that the Pact's restrictions were chains, not protections. Species across the galaxy are watching, some with fear, others with hope. Quan's analysis proved correct. The attack had been sanctioned by the Council, approved in secret by Morthen and the other elder species. But the Breathin had gathered evidence. Intercepted communications that proved the conspiracy. Thick released it all to the public. Networks. The galaxy exploded in outrage. The Council had claimed to be neutral, to be protecting younger species. Instead, they had sent those species to die fighting humanity. The moderates and isolationists within the Council immediately withdrew their support from Morthen. 3 species announced they were leaving the Pact entirely in the Grand Assembly Hall. Morthen faced unprecedented criticism. Species that had never questioned the Council before now demanded answers. How could they trust an organization that used them as proxy warriors? How could they accept restrictions that left them defenseless against anyone who rejected those same rules? Admiral Bei Junwoo, commander of Earth's home fleet, gave a press conference that was broadcast across known space. His message was simple and powerful. The Yulnathi attacked us because they believed we were weak. The Council allowed it because they wanted to test us. Both were wrong. Humanity does not seek conflict, but we will not accept domination. We offer friendship to any species that respects our sovereignty. We offer fair trade, cultural exchange, and mutual defense pacts. What we will not offer is submission. On New Jeju, Lieutenant Yoon walked through the settlement as civilians emerged from shelters. Children looked up at the sky where debris from the battle still glowed as it burned in the atmosphere. One small girl tugged on Yoon's armor. "Are the bad aliens gone?" She asked. Yoon knelt down to the child's level. "Yes, they're gone. And we showed them that humans protect their own. You're safe now." But Yoon knew the truth. This victory would bring more challenges. The galaxy had seen what unrestricted human technology could do. Some species would be intimidated into friendship. Others would see humanity as a threat that must be eliminated before it grew stronger. The Council would not forgive this humiliation. The proxy war had been won. But the real struggle was just beginning. Captain On brought the Indomitable back to Luna Station with minimal damage. His crew had performed brilliantly, and the ship's new weapon systems had exceeded all expectations. But as he stood on the bridge watching Earth rotate below, he felt no triumph, only a sense of foreboding. "We've kicked over the biggest anthill in the galaxy," he said to his first officer. "Now we have to deal with all the angry insects." Across the galaxy, the impacts multiplied. 5 more species suspended their pact obligations to declared complete independence. The Council's authority weakened with each passing day. Morthen called emergency sessions, demanding unity. But his words fell on suspicious ears. In her office on Earth, Lee Hai-jin read reports of galactic turmoil with growing concern. Humanity had wanted freedom, and they had achieved it. But they had also destabilized the oldest political structure in known space. The responsibility for what came next weighed heavily on her. Park Nari entered the office with new data. 47 species have now left the Pact or suspended their obligations. The Council is barely functional. 3 regional wars have broken out between species settling old grudges. And everyone is watching us, waiting to see what humans do next. Hai-jin looked at her friend and colleague. "We wanted to be free. Now we have to help others learn to be free too, whether we're ready or not." The Battle of New Jeju had lasted for hours. The consequences would last for generations. The Grand Assembly Hall stood empty for the first time in 4,000 years. Species that once gathered in unity now refused to attend council sessions. The building that had symbolized galactic order was now a monument to its collapse. Song Yoonji had never wanted to be prime minister during a galactic crisis. But history did not care about personal preferences. She stood before the United Earth Assembly, preparing to address not just her own people, but the dozens of species watching the broadcast across the stars. 6 months ago, humanity refused the Galactic Pact, she began. We did so believing that freedom was worth any cost. Today, 47 species have followed our path. The old order is broken. Now we must decide what comes next. The chamber filled with murmurs. Everyone knew what she would propose next. The Equitable Compact, a new treaty built on principles the galaxy had forgotten, consent, equality, and mutual respect. On the Council's homeworld of Velthera Prime, Morthen watched the broadcast with growing fury. His 800-year reign as Council leader was ending in chaos. Species he had guided for centuries now called him a tyrant. The elegant system he had maintained was being torn apart by one arrogant young race. She speaks of equality, he said to his few remaining supporters. But equality among species of vastly different ages and capabilities is madness. The young must be guided by the old. Order must be maintained. A Qualish representative, one of the species that had suspended pact obligations, shook his head. The young have proven they can think for themselves. Morthon. The Battle of New Jeju demonstrated that perfectly. Perhaps it is the old who need to learn new ways. Morthen's rage found focus. If diplomacy would not work, if the proxy attack had failed, then perhaps direct action was necessary. He called a secret meeting of the loyalist species. Those who still believed in the old ways. Admiral Bei Jun-woo stood on the bridge of the ENS Defiance. Leading a fleet of 30 human warships through neutral space, they were not alone. Ships from 6 other species flew in formation with them. Species that had left the pact and now sought new alliances. It was the first joint military exercise between free species. And every movement was watched by intelligence services across the galaxy. Bei knew the importance of appearances. They needed to look strong, unified, and professional. They needed to show that the post-pact galaxy could still maintain order. All ships. Execute Formation Delta, he commanded. 37 vessels from 7 different species moved in perfect coordination. Weeks of practice and shared tactical protocols made them operate as one fleet rather than separate groups. On Earth, Yuna had been negotiating for 72 hours straight. As humanity's chief diplomat for the Equitable Compact, she mediated between species with centuries-old grudges, conflicting territorial claims, and vastly different cultural values. It was exhausting work. The Breton wanted guarantees of technological freedom. The Rithon demanded mutual defense obligations. The Qualish insisted on environmental protections. 36 other species had their own requirements. Finding common ground seemed impossible. Cannot make everyone happy, her assistant said during a brief break. Some of these ands directly contradict each other. Yuna sipped her coffee and smiled tiredly. Then we find what everyone agrees on and build from there. Everyone wants to be treated with respect. Everyone wants their sovereignty recognized. Everyone wants fair trade. Start with the universal principles. Add optional modules for those who want more. It was a radical approach. The old pact had been monolithic, one size fits all. The Equitable Compact would be modular, allowing species to choose their level of integration. Some might only want trade agreements. Others might desire full military alliances. The key was choice, but not everyone wanted choice. The loyalist species, led by Morthen, began mobilizing their fleets. 43 species remained committed to the old pact, and they had hundreds of warships. If they chose to enforce the old order by military might, the galaxy would burn. Giwan's intelligence network picked up the mobilization immediately. She sent urgent warnings to every level of Earth's government and to their new allies. The cascade they had started was about to turn violent. 3 wars erupted in the same week: the Korvathi and the Melon. Species with a border dispute frozen for 200 years by council decree finally went to war. Without the Pact's restrictions, they unleashed weapons that had been banned for generations. Entire planets were evacuated as the conflict spiraled out of control. The Cynthian Collective. Artificial intelligences who had been forced to limit their own development. Declared independence and seized control of their creator's homeworld. The revolt was swift and mostly bloodless, but it terrified organic species across the galaxy. The Jalith Empire, seeing opportunity in chaos, invaded 3 neighboring systems that the Council had placed off limits. They calculated that with the Pact collapsed, there would be no unified response. They were wrong. Oh, Yuna worked her diplomatic miracle. In just 4 days, She convinced 23 species to sign an emergency mutual defense agreement. When the Jalith invasion force reached the second system, they found not just local defenders, but a coalition. Fleet of 100 ships from a dozen species. The Jalith withdrew. Immediately, it was proof that the post-pact galaxy could still organize collective defense. The key was that species chose to participate rather than being compelled. The volunteers fought with conviction that conscripts never could. Song. Yonji announced the Equitable Compact's first draft to the galaxy. It was a simple document, only 12 pages compared to the Pact's 300. The core principles were clear: sovereign equality, voluntary cooperation, mutual respect, and freedom to develop without artificial restrictions. Within hours, 16 species signed. Within days, 40 more expressed interest. The cascade was accelerating, but in a positive direction now. Morthen's response was desperate. He declared that all Pact loyalists would enforce a blockade on Earth and its allies. No trade, no communication, no travel. Humanity and the rebels would be isolated until they returned to the Council. Admiral Bay responded by leading the coalition fleet directly to Velthar Prime. 50 warships from 8 species arrived in the Council's home system and held position just outside weapons range. The message was clear. The blockade worked both ways. Morthen Bay broadcast on open channels, "Your era is over. The species of the galaxy have chosen freedom. You can accept this gracefully, or you can watch everything you built crumble around you. But you cannot stop it." The standoff lasted 3 tense days. Ships from both sides held their positions, weapons ready, but not firing. The galaxy held its breath. On the third day, something unexpected happened. The Voth themselves, Morthen's own species, sent a delegation to the coalition fleet. They requested permission to speak with Admiral Bay. The Voth delegates explained that Morthen no longer represented their will. He had been leader for 800 years, and during that time he had become obsessed with maintaining control. But the younger Voth, those who had been born in the last few centuries, wanted change. They wanted to see what the galaxy could become without the Pact's chains. "We ask that you do not judge our entire species by one stubborn old tree," the lead delegate said. "Many of us admire what humanity has done. We wish to explore this new path with you." Morthen was deposed within a week. His own species removed him from power, not through violence, but through a vote of no confidence. It was the first time a council leader had been removed in recorded history. The Loyalist coalition crumbled. Without Morthen's driving force, species began reconsidering their position. Some signed the Equitable Compact immediately. Others negotiated special terms. A few remained independent, choosing neither the old pact nor the new compact. But they no longer tried to enforce the old order on others. The 3 regional wars proved harder to resolve. Oyuna and her diplomatic team worked tirelessly, mediating between the Korvathi and Milan, negotiating rights for the Scythian collective, and convincing the Jalith to accept their new borders. It took months, but slowly peace returned. Not the enforced peace of the pact, but a genuine peace based on negotiated settlements and mutual agreement. Parknari became the first chancellor of the Concord, the governing body of the Equitable Compact. It was a largely ceremonial role, as the compact gave the central government very little power. Real authority remained with individual species. But someone needed to chair meetings and coordinate voluntary cooperation. "How does it feel," Lehigh Jin asked her friend, "to be the leader of the galactic government?" Parknari laughed. "I am not a leader. I am a facilitator. The whole point of the compact is that no one has the power to dictate to others. I just help everyone talk to each other." On Luna Station, Commander Choi Minho trained a new generation of defense officers. Young people from 20 different species learned human military tactics, studied unrestricted technology development, and practiced coalition warfare. They would return to their homeworlds as ambassadors of the new way captain. Han and the Horizon's Edge returned to their exploration mission, but now they were not alone. 5 other species had sent exploration ships to join them. Together they would map new regions of space. discover new worlds, and maybe find new species to invite into the growing community of free peoples. Lieutenant Yoon received a promotion to Captain Wee, in command of New Jeju's defense forces. The colony had grown significantly since the battle, as refugees from the wars sought safety in human space. It was becoming a symbol of the new order, a place where multiple species lived together by choice rather than decree. 1 year after the refusal, Song Yoonji gave another address. She stood not in Earth's assembly, but on Concord Station, a new structure built by 6 species working together in neutral space. "We did not set out to destroy the Galactic Pact," she said. "We only sought freedom for ourselves. But in claiming that freedom, we showed others that it was possible. The cascade that followed was not our doing alone. Every species that chose to leave the pact made their own choice. Every species that signed the compact did so voluntarily. Behind her, representatives from 82 species stood together. The old council had ruled 847 species. The new compact had far fewer members, but they were there by choice. And their numbers grew every day. The galaxy was not perfect. Conflicts still arose. Not every species joined the compact. Some chose isolation. Others formed regional alliances. But the age of enforced uniformity was over. The age of diversity and choice had begun. Morthen watched it all from his home world, stripped of power but still alive. He had been offered a place in the new order, a chance to share his millennia of wisdom. He had refused. Some things, he believed, were worth preserving even if the galaxy disagreed. But even he could not deny the energy. An innovation that exploded across the stars. Technologies that had been suppressed for centuries were now being developed openly. Art and culture flourished as species mixed freely. New alliances formed based on genuine affinity rather than geographic necessity. The cascade had been painful. It had cost lives. But it had also brought something the galaxy had not felt in thousands of years: hope for a better future. 20 years had changed everything. Kong Daeon walked slowly through the gardens of the Remembrance Park on Earth. His hair now gray, his steps less certain than they had been 2 decades ago. Around him, monuments honored those who had died in the transition from the old order to the new. The war dead, the casualties of regional conflicts, and even those who had simply given their lives to building something better. A young Breathen student approached him with a recording device. "Ambassador Kong? May I ask you a question for my history project?" Daeon smiled. "Of course. Do you regret it? Refusing the pact? So many died in the wars that followed. Was freedom worth that cost?" It was a question he had asked himself 1,000 times. Daeon looked up at the sky, where ships from a dozen species moved freely between Earth and the orbital stations. "Every person who died is a tragedy," he said carefully. "But those wars were not caused by our refusal. They were caused by 6,000 years of suppression. The pact did not prevent conflict, it only froze it in place. When the freeze ended, yes, violence erupted. But now those conflicts are resolved. Now species live in actual peace, not in forced silence." The student nodded, recording every word, then thanked him and left. Daeon continued his walk, remembering that day in the Grand Assembly Hall when he and Park Nari had said one simple word: "No, Captain Kim Sora." Stood on the bridge of the ESS Pioneer, a ship unlike any that had existed before. It was the largest exploration vessel ever built, a joint project of 8 species, crewed by 200 people from 20 different worlds. Behind them, 3 other equally massive ships followed in formation. Approaching the boundary of explored space, her navigation officer reported. He was Qualish, his blue skin shimmering in the bridge lights. "All ships, maintain formation," Sora commanded. "We're about to go where no one has gone before." It was not hyperbole. Under the pact, exploration had been tightly controlled. Species could only expand into council-approved zones. Entire regions of the galaxy had been declared off-limits for reasons that were never explained. Now those restrictions were gone. For massive ships carrying the best scientists and explorers from multiple species were about to enter territory that had been forbidden for millennia. "What do you think we'll find?" her first officer asked. She was human too, but her family had lived on Mars for 3 generations. Maybe nothing, Sora admitted. Maybe wonders. Maybe dangers the Council was right to fear. But whatever we find, we'll face it as free people making our own choices. On Concord Station, Jin Wubin reviewed the latest amendments to the Equitable Compact. As chief architect of the agreement, his job was never done. The compact was a living document, constantly evolving as new species joined and new situations arose. 612 species had now signed. Some were full members, participating in every aspect of the cooperative government. Others maintained associate status, enjoying trade benefits but remaining independent in other ways. A few had special arrangements tailored to their unique needs. The Jalith want to renegotiate their terms again, his assistant informed him. Wubin sighed, but smiled. Of course they do. Schedule a mediation session. And remind them that unlike the old pact, they actually get to negotiate this time. The Jalith had been among the last holdouts, but even they had eventually seen the benefits of cooperation over isolation. Their economy had grown more in 20 years of free trade than in 200 years under the Pact's controlled system. Park Nari sat in her office as chancellor, reviewing the day's reports. She was older now too, but her mind was as sharp as ever. The job had been harder than she expected, not because the compact gave her too much power, but because it gave her so little. She could not order species to do anything. She could only persuade, mediate, and coordinate. It was exhausting. It was also exactly what the galaxy needed. A priority message arrived from the Voth homeworld. She opened it with curiosity. The Voth had been among the most enthusiastic adopters of the new order, perhaps because they felt guilt about Morthan's actions. Chancellor Park, we request permission to present a gift to humanity. We have restored the Grand Assembly Hall and wish to offer it as the permanent home of the Concord government. It seems fitting that the place where the old order ended should become the birthplace of the new. Nari felt tears in her eyes. 20 years ago, she had walked out of that hall in defiance. Now she was being invited back as a leader of equals. She accepted immediately. On New Jeju, now a thriving city of 500,000 people from 30 species, Captain Yoon Mai-rae trained the newest recruits to the colony's defense force. They were young people, most born after the refusal, who had never known the Pact's restrictions. Why do we train so hard? One recruit asked. The wars are over. The compact maintains peace. Yoon shook her head. The compact maintains cooperation. Peace is maintained by strength and vigilance. We train because freedom must always be defended. The moment we take it for granted is the moment someone tries to take it away. She thought of the battle she had fought on this very ground 20 years ago. The young people around her could not imagine what it had been like to face 40 warships with so few defenders. She hoped they would never have to learn. Admiral Bae Junwoo had retired from military service 5 years earlier, but he still consulted on defense matters. He sat in a classroom at the Luna Military Academy, teaching the next generation of fleet commanders. The old Pact military doctrine assumed that all species fought the same way. He explained to his students who came from a dozen different worlds. They standardized everything: weapons, tactics, formations. Do you know what that created? Predictability. And predictability in warfare is death. A Breathen student raised a claw. So how do we avoid becoming predictable in the compact defense force? By celebrating differences instead of erasing them, Bae replied. Your species sees in spectrums humans cannot perceive. The Qualish can survive in vacuum. The Rithon can calculate trajectories instinctively. Each species brings unique advantages. Our strength is diversity, not uniformity. Lee Hai-jin had become Earth's ambassador to the Concord, representing humanity in the complex dance of interstellar politics. She stood in the restored Grand Assembly Hall for its reopening ceremony. Looking at the changes the Voth had made, the old seating had been arranged in circles, the eldest species closest to the center. Now it was a simple auditorium where every species had equal access. The signing stone, where species had been forced to accept the Pact's terms, has been replaced with a round table where representatives could negotiate as equals. Thick found her in the crowd. The Breathen operative had become a close friend over the years, and now served as his species' senior diplomat. "I never thought I would see this day," he said quietly. "A galaxy where my species is not just safe, but truly free." Hai-Jin smiled. 20 years ago, I worried we had made a terrible mistake. Today, I know we did the right thing. The ceremony began with a moment of silence for those who had died in the transition. Then Chancellor Park spoke. Her words carried to 600 worlds. "We gather here not as subjects of a council, but as partners in a compact. We come not because we must, but because we choose to. The galaxy before us is vast and full of wonders and dangers, but we will face it together, as equals, as friends, and as free people." The hall erupted in approval, hundreds of different species expressing joy in their own ways. It was chaos, beautiful chaos. Nothing like the ordered silence of the old council sessions. After the ceremony, Dayon met with Park Nari privately. They were old friends who had started this journey together. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we had signed?" Dayon asked. Park Nari considered the question. "We would be safe. Controlled, but safe. Earth would have its place in the old order. And 6,000 years of stagnation would have continued. Some would say that was preferable to the wars and chaos," Dayon noted. "Now some would be wrong," Park Nari replied firmly. "Look at what the galaxy has achieved in just 20 years. Technologies the Pact suppressed are now saving lives. Species that were enemies are now friends. Young races are not kept weak and helpless. We have actual cooperation instead of enforced compliance." She pulled up a holographic display showing scientific breakthroughs from the last 2 decades. Faster than light drives that were twice as efficient. Medical treatments that extended lifespans across dozens of species. Agricultural techniques that ended hunger on 20 worlds. Energy systems that were clean and abundant. The Pact prevented all of this, she said. They claimed it was for safety, but really it was about control. The old species wanted to remain on top forever. They were willing to sacrifice the potential of the entire galaxy to maintain their position. Dayon nodded slowly. "And now? Now the galaxy is messy and chaotic and beautiful. Innovation happens faster than we can track. New alliances form every day. Young species are not afraid to try new things. Is it perfect? No, but it is alive in a way it has not been for thousands of years." Far from the celebrations, in a quiet home on the Voth homeworld, Morthon watched the ceremony on his screen. He was ancient now, even by Voth standards, his metal-like body dulled with age. He had been offered forgiveness, offered a place in the new order, but he had refused. Yet even he could not deny what he saw. The galaxy was thriving. Species that had been stagnant for centuries were now vibrant and growing. Technologies he thought impossible were becoming commonplace. And despite his predictions of chaos and destruction, the galaxy had not torn itself apart. Perhaps he had been wrong. It was a hard thought for someone who had led for 800 years. But as he watched young beings from dozens of species working together, laughing together, building together, he had to admit the possibility. The old order had maintained peace. But peace without growth, without freedom, without the chance to reach one's full potential, was not life. It was just slow death. Captain Kim Sora and her exploration fleet found something extraordinary in the Forbidden Zones. An ancient structure, built by a civilization that predated even the Voth. Inside, they found records of dozens of extinct species. Races that had been part of an even older galactic government. According to these records, her science officer reported. This previous civilization enforced even stricter controls than the Pact. Eventually, it collapsed under the weight of its own restrictions. The species rebelled, but by then it was too late. There,